It's a Friday night, and you get to go to Blockbuster to pick out one movie to keep through the weekend. You scour the aisles, overwhelmed in the best way by the cinematic paradise. The options are endless. Will it be Jumanji? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? That weird Thumbelina movie that was secretly a banger? Or were you a twisted kid like me and pick up the Black Cauldron? You finally decide what your weekend flick is, and now it's time to pick up the microwavable popcorn and snow caps in the checkout line before heading home to your VCR and inflatable chair. This was the magic of Blockbuster, and I think you truly had to be there to understand how special it felt having endless options at your literal fingertips. In reality, we have way more options now, but there's just something about streaming that isn't quite as charming. There is no adventure in streaming, and that's okay. It's the now and it's the future, but it is nice to reflect on the days of old when it was a Blockbuster night. For myself, it's very hard to imagine a world before Blockbuster. It was a part of my entire childhood, and thinking about it, my wheels got spinning. I have a general idea of what led to Blockbuster's downfall with streaming and specifically Netflix, but I want to know the details. And I also want to know, how did Blockbuster's meteoric rise even happen? When, why, and how did such a simple but genius idea reach the heights that it did? And how high were those heights really? I was a kid, I thought Blockbuster was great, but was it even that successful? We watched Blockbuster crash just as fast as it ascended, and like I said, we sort of put the blame on Netflix. But I really want to know, was there more to it? What really happened to every millennial's favorite weekend stop for entertainment? To get to the rise and the inevitable fall, we need to start at the first humble Blockbuster in Dallas, Texas. On October 19th, 1985, the first Blockbuster video rental store opened. In 1985, video stores were mostly small-scaled and had a niche or limited selection of titles. These were mom-and-pop shops, so they didn't have the funds to provide thousands of titles. This also meant that they could not afford someone coming in, renting Salem's Lot, and then deciding, hey, you know what, I'm gonna keep this. And so to prevent theft, the membership card was born at these mom-and-pop shops. This wasn't some quick give your name, number, and email at the register and bada bing, bada boom, you're a member. No. You had to give over your personal information, documents, your firstborn child, and a huge security deposit if you were accepted. If you were one of the lucky accepted members, you got a physical card. Again, these were mom and pop shops. You were not getting this heavy duty, very high quality card. You know, the ones that are really hard to lose because they weigh as much as your head. And these were long before the Apple Wallet / keychain days. There was no database or computer at these shops. They couldn't look up your name and information to verify that you are a member. So if that card disappeared, you disappeared. So you pay your dues, you hand over your firstborn child, give every shred of your information. You make sure you never lose your card. Everything should be smooth sailing, right? Wrong. The intrusion and difficulties were just beginning. If you rented a VHS and you did not rewind that tape, blacklisted. Not kicked off the member list. Well, sometimes, I guess in certain places, they could very well just make you lose your membership entirely for doing that. But at the very least, in these shops, you were fined and put on very thin ice. So as you can see, the whole movie renting process was far from sunshine and roses. It was restrictive and expensive and dehumanizing. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but how embarrassing to be judged so hard, all because you want to rent Mommy Dearest and Indiana Jones. But the point is, by the time Blockbuster opened with 8,000 VHS and 2,000 beta tapes displayed on shelves around an organized store that had an easy breezy atmosphere and an even easier and breezier computerized checkout process, the people were hungry for it, starved for it. Blockbuster's beginnings can also be traced back to another company, Cook Data Services, founded by David Cook in 1978. The company's primary goal was to supply software services to the oil and gas industries throughout Texas, but it was very unsuccessful. Sandy Cook, David's wife, wanted to get into the video business. Intrigued by the idea, Mr. Cook started researching the business and figuring out how it could be successful. Once he realized the potential of the video business, he began using profit that he made from the sale of David P. Cook and Associates, the subsidiary of his company, and he bought into a video store franchise in Dallas known as VideoWorks. He was looking for a, quote, fragmented market without dominant players, a business that could be set up on a local basis, where we could throw up some competitive barriers. When VideoWorks would not allow him to decorate the interior of his store with a blue and yellow design, he departed the franchise and opened the very first Blockbuster. That's the 1985 humble beginning Blockbuster in Dallas, Texas, and he did that under his own company, Blockbuster Video Inc. When Cook really gained confidence in the great potential of video rentals, he completely abandoned the oil industry and began franchising the Blockbuster store. The chain's name is derived from the term blockbuster, a Hollywood term for a successful film, or in literature terminology, a best-selling novel. Cook's plan was to invest up to $700,000 of his own funds in a massive inventory of tapes. We're talking $7,000 to $12,000 per store. Blockbusters would start to open in densely populated cities, which had the most potential customers. Cook also had the genius idea to customize each and every Blockbuster based on the local demographics. If a town was full of an older generation, the elderly, you'd probably want to stock that store with nostalgic classics. If another store is closer to a college, maybe throw in stoner comedies. If the town is full of fertile myrtles, you probably need a hefty stock of kid movies. Those stores would be large, clean, well-lit, open late, and decked out in blue and gold. And listen, I am no stranger to the successful marketing with colors discussion. It's actually my favorite conversation topic, which oddly enough does not come up in regular conversation often, so I am very excited to shine here. Blue is the color of intelligence, communication, trust. And that trust is important because usually these are companies that want to build a long-term relationship with their customers. Think phone companies, hospitals. Yellow branding in marketing is a little bit more complex. The way I see it is an expression of a logical brand, but an optimistic brand. Yellow on its own stimulates the logical side of the brain and promotes mental clarity and facilitates the decision-making process. So you will see yellow in a lot of information companies or academic-related products. But also, as I mentioned, it's more complex. It's also a very optimistic color because yellow is associated with warmth and cheerfulness. Tying all of this back to Blockbuster, they offered quick, knowledgeable, and cheerful service, convenience, and a great selection of movies. Blue and yellow are the perfect colors to express that through their branding. After Cook opened the first Blockbuster in 1985, he added 3 more stores the following year. By 1985, the video rental industry grew from $1 billion to $3.7 billion. And even better, there was no dominant player. As I mentioned, most video stores were run by individuals who faced relatively high startup costs and had to rely on their own taste and their own instinct when choosing which movies to stock. A decision that could make or break their small business. In September 1986, the company set out to raise more money for expansion with an initial stock offering. But days before the sale was to take place, a damaging article was written by a financial columnist, citing Cook's background in the oil industry and really questioning the company's know-how when it came to the video industry. The article caused the equity offering to be canceled, which deprived the company of money it desperately needed. It was a major blow, and the company ended 1986 with $3.2 million in losses. Good news was around the corner, though. In 1987, millionaire H. Wayne Huizenga, sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Hi,
quick editing note, I am 100% mispronouncing this man's name throughout the entire video. It is Huizenga. I am so sorry. That pronunciation never occurred to me. So, Huizenga agreed to acquire several Blockbuster stores. Huizenga built the largest waste management company in the world from a humble $5,000. Safe to say Huizenga knew his business, and that showed. At that point, there were 19 Blockbusters, and that attracted the attention of Huizenga's associate John Melk. Melk was not only impressed with the number of stores that were already up and running, but he was also impressed with the store's efficiency, their business model, and the fact that this was family-friendly video renting. The entire Blockbuster experience seemed pleasant and wonderfully simple. The company began to buy back franchised operations with the goal of 60% company-owned Blockbuster outlets, as well as buying up chains of video stores that already dominated their local market. The investors utilized techniques from the waste business and were very inspired by McDonald's expansion technique and rapidly began to expand Blockbuster. At the time, this rapid and aggressive type of expansion was a great example of work smarter, not harder. To support its expansion, Blockbuster established 6 regional offices, including a distribution center in Dallas stocked with tapes. The tapes were all electronically tracked using a barcode scanning system, so new stores could pop up quickly without worrying about tracking down tapes to rent out. By the end of 1987, Blockbuster was operating 133 stores and had become the country's 5th largest video chain in terms of revenue. Sales rose from $7.4 million in 1986 to $43.2 million that year. In 1978, Cook left the company entirely. Him and Huizenga had a professional disagreement about where to take the business. Huizenga wanted to borrow money so they could open company-owned stores rather than franchising, whereas Cook was probably reasonably worried about taking on more debt. So Cook left, selling his shares for about $12 million. He later calculated that those shares would probably be worth around $300 million, a bit of an L. With Cook gone, the business began to grow even more rapidly. Blockbuster continued its ambitious expansion program in 1988. The company purchased Video Library Inc., made a deal with the United Cable Television Corporation to open 100 franchise stores over the next 2.5 years. And in January 1989, Blockbuster finalized its purchase of Las Vegas-based Major Video Inc., the country's 4th largest video rental chain. There was a lot to celebrate at this time, but a major roadblock threatened the ongoing process as well, when Nintendo decided to sue Blockbuster. Nintendo is serious about its intellectual property and was not a fan of the rental stores reaping the benefits of its IP without sharing a portion of the profits. The company wasn't sure how to go about banning video game rentals until the Computer Software Rental Amendments Act started making its way through Congress. If you are a normal person and you don't know what the Computer Software Rental Amendments Act is, basically, it sought to ban computer software rentals due to the influx of piracy sweeping through the nation. And Nintendo viewed the Amendments Act as its chance to tackle the issues it had with the video game rentals. The company argued that the act should include video games since they are a type of computer software. However, the rental store business was a cash cow, and wherever there's money, there's usually a lobby group not too far behind, and this situation was no different. The lobby groups involved with the rental stores really pushed back and promised to do everything in their power to prevent the banishment of video game rentals. The lobby groups were ultimately successful, causing Congress to completely ignore Nintendo's pleas. Without any federal assistance, Nintendo took matters into their own hands. After learning Blockbuster had started photocopying various Nintendo manuals to accompany video game rentals, Nintendo decided to sue for copyright infringement in 1989. To break it down for you, Blockbuster would charge $4 for 3 nights to rent the popular Nintendo games. Each game was accompanied by a manual that is, quote, essential for game players to fully understand and enjoy Nintendo's video games, unquote. That was straight from Nintendo's general counsel. Manuals had been copied when the original manual was lost or not returned to a retailer after it was rented. A Nintendo spokesman said, "We never had any intention to have our manuals rented, and we intend to protect our copyright." The spokesperson denied, however, that Nintendo was out to stop Blockbuster from renting the games with this lawsuit. Blockbuster hit back and said Nintendo was just salty about the whole video game renting failure, and this was their petty response to said failure. However, Blockbuster quickly ended the practice and decided to hire third parties to create replacements for any lost or damaged manuals. They settled the lawsuit with Nintendo a year later and kept the expansion going, now going international with stores in London and in Canada. South of the border in the United States, the chain had opened up its 1,200th store by June of 1990. New stores were opening up literally, and I do mean literally, every 24 hours. That is how quickly Blockbuster was spreading. In October the same year, Blockbuster announced plans to cooperate with Den Fujita, the company that ran McDonald's franchises in Japan. The following month, Blockbuster made its largest acquisition to date when it acquired Errol's, a video store chain with 200 outlets on the East Coast and in the Midwest. Although Blockbuster continued its strong pace of new store openings in 1990, the slowing down of growth in the video rental industry was becoming evident. It was clear Blockbuster knew how to open stores, but they also needed to encourage rentals to keep those stores open, which was growing into a problem. Blockbuster became a multi-billion-dollar company, but Huizenga was worried about new technology and how it could threaten their business, such as video on demand and the growth of cable television. In 1991, just 3 days after Time Warner had announced it would upgrade its cable system, Blockbuster shares dropped to more than 10%. It was time to figure out a plan of action, and the company decided that the solution would revolve around marketing and more acquisitions. The company launched an advertising campaign themed Win in a Flash, which encouraged customers to rent more movies for a chance to win more prizes. It was a fun and appealing draw with a million prizes, allegedly. Cash prizes up to $100,000, a Jeep Wrangler, and a trip to Universal Studios Florida, just to name a few. That same year, Blockbuster also dropped its rental price for hit movies for the first 3 months after their release, but shortened the time that they were taken out, as a further step to raise earnings. They hired more senior executives with long-term experience in the retail field, and they expanded more internationally. The company found markets in Europe, Australia, and Latin America. With 30 stores already established in Britain, Blockbuster announced in November 1991 a large expansion in that country, designed to make it the nation's #1 video rental chain. By the end of the year, the company had opened stores in Japan, Chile, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, and Guam. Unfortunately, the slowing of growth trend continued. The first quarter financial results for 1991 were very disappointing. Huizenga blamed the Gulf War for keeping people interested in the news rather than renting movies. Bit of a reach, but okay. I wasn't even alive, so what do I know? The why didn't matter. Franchisors began to panic. In early May, Cox Communications, one of the company's franchisors, announced they would sell all 82 of their Blockbuster stores. Around this time, Wall Street pundits continued to predict that Blockbuster's success was short-lived as well. They believed the video rental industry would be made obsolete by new technologies, the very fear of Huizenga. By 1993, there were 3,400 Blockbusters worldwide. About 1/3 of them were overseas. In late January of that year, Blockbuster branched out even further, paying $25 million for 1/3 controlling share of Republic Pictures, a movie and television production and distribution company based in Hollywood. Republic's most valuable asset was its film library of television shows and films, including several John Wayne movies and the hit television series Bonanza. In March 1993, Blockbuster also purchased 48.2% of Spelling Entertainment, a producer of very popular television shows with a large library of past programs.
Huizenga was beginning to panic and started brainstorming ideas to keep the excitement for movie rentals going. He considered buying a cable company, but this was seriously unknown territory for Blockbuster, and he decided to not take that risk. He also had the idea for a 2,500-acre Blockbuster sports and amusement park in Florida, which kind of really want, actually. This was a serious idea they had. They were considering this as late as 1994. Huizenga was stumped and could not think up a viable solution, so he made the decision to sell Blockbuster to Viacom and completely pulled out.
Viacom Inc. is a media giant, and their brands include MTV and Nickelodeon, a big fry for sure. Blockbuster started coming up with more creative ways to develop excitement in their current customers and to reach new customers as well. The Blockbuster Block Party concept was test marketed in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Indianapolis, Indiana in 1994. An article from 1994 says that Block Party had a city street theme with high-tech attractions designed for 18 to 45-year-olds, including a motion simulator ride and a high-tech maze. The concept was very similar to Disney's Disney Quest, which also failed to find an audience.
The demographic for 18 to 45 is really broad. Obviously, I'm no marketing expert, so I could be completely wrong, but just thinking of trying to appeal to college kids and like middle-aged moms, it's definitely doable. Like Dave & Buster's comes to mind, but it's not easy to achieve, that's for sure. You definitely have to have like a superstar idea.
The company tried to jazz up excitement again by starting an award show that ran annually from 1995 to 2001, called the Blockbuster Entertainment Awards. Winners were determined by votes cast by customers in Blockbuster stores. The ballot consisted of the year's 3 top-grossing films, videos, and music albums in 33 categories. Over 1.5 million votes were cast, and the viewership ranged from 3 million to almost 10 million, all depending on the year. In November 2001, Blockbuster announced that it would cancel the 2002 award show following concerns about viewership and celebrity attendance after the September 11th attacks. Going back to the 90s, the digital video disc, DVD, made its debut, and in 1997, Netflix, an online DVD rental service, was founded, and not long after, the e-commerce giant Amazon.com launched a video and DVD store. The competition was cornering Blockbuster at every angle. In addition to Amazon and Netflix, Blockbuster faced additional competition from the rise of pay-per-view and on-demand movie services, through which viewers could pay and watch movies instantly in their own homes. And then there was also the start of their biggest competitor, Redbox.
Some of these competitors were not just riding the wave of what was convenient. The foundation of companies like Netflix and Redbox was based on correcting the annoyances from Blockbuster. Reed Hastings, the co-founder and CEO of Netflix, said the idea was sparked by a $40 return fee. He was just working out at the gym one day, all annoyed about this fine, and it inspired him to think up a service that allowed someone to order a movie online and receive it by mail. Mark Randolph, another co-founder, said this idea was a complete marketing gag and just wasn't true at all, which obviously the whole story behind it isn't real, but the main takeaway was very real. Hastings capitalized on the shortcomings of Blockbuster and thought up a profitable service that Randolph could fund.
Netflix was the David to Blockbuster's Goliath when it launched. The idea was very ambitious, and it was not successful right off the bat. So much so that Netflix thought it would be better to join Blockbuster because they thought they could not possibly beat them.
Reed Hastings approached then CEO of Blockbuster, John Antioco, with a merger proposal. Hastings wanted $50 million for Netflix, and as a part of the deal, Netflix would run Blockbuster's online brand. Of course, this deal never materialized, partly or maybe completely because Blockbuster laughed Netflix out of their offices when they met to discuss the deal.
It was tiny.
involuntary and vanished almost immediately. But as soon as I saw it, I knew what was happening. John Antioco was struggling not to laugh. That was a quote from Netflix's Mark Randolph. Netflix eventually crafted a successful business model, a subscription-based service with no due dates, no late fees, and unlimited access to content for only $19.95. It also had a queue that subscribers used to specify the order in which DVDs should be mailed to them, and a delivery system that automatically mailed out a DVD as soon as the previous DVD was returned. The DVDs arrived in a thin package with a postage-paid return sleeve inside. Netflix covered all postage costs. This formula proved a hit, and Netflix steadily added subscribers. Within 5 years of launch, Netflix was shipping millions of DVDs daily. Going back a little bit, the same year that Antioco became CEO, Warner Brothers offered Blockbuster an exclusive rental deal, seeing as DVDs were emerging as the new home video medium. Blockbuster would have rights to rent out these films for a short time before they were put on sale. The studio was to receive 40% of rental revenue in return, which was already the same deal in place for VHS rentals. Blockbuster was obsessed with the new releases. They knew more people would rent the new movies because generally it wouldn't be available to buy in-store for a further 28 days. Customers had the option to rent the film, wait for the general release, or they could buy the DVD before the general release, and this cost about $70 to $100 at the time per title, and of course this is substantially pricier than the suggested retail price. But for whatever reason, Blockbuster turned the offer down, and the Warner Brothers responded by lowering its DVD wholesale price in order to compete with the rental industry. Walmart seized the opportunity and in a few years surpassed Blockbuster as the studio's single largest source of revenue. Other mass retailers soon followed suit. Many began selling DVDs below the wholesale price in hopes of selling more items with better profit margins as a result of the additional foot traffic in their stores. Unable to match these prices, Blockbuster's business model was severely impacted. In late 1998, Blockbuster launched a loyalty program called Blockbuster Rewards that allowed customers to earn free rentals, including one older title each month from the category of Blockbuster favorites. This is a no-brainer, and I'm surprised they didn't have a rewards program sooner. That's like marketing 101. Reward the customer, make them feel appreciated, and they will remain loyal. After the 1998 test launch, the chain went nationwide with the program in 1999, hoping to patch up some of the damage done to the business. The company was still scrambling with concern and needed an opportunity to keep business aggressive. And in mid-2000, Blockbuster partnered with Enron in an attempt to create a video-on-demand service. The agreement was supposed to last for 20 years. However, Enron terminated the deal in March 2001 over fears that Blockbuster wouldn't be able to provide sufficient films for the service. Oh, and Enron may have filed for bankruptcy that same year, so maybe a coinkydink. Enron was one of the fastest growing and supposedly innovative companies in the United States in the 1990s. However, their whole situation, their whole edifice was based on massive accounting and corporate fraud that eventually came to light and resulted in Enron filing bankruptcy in 2001. The biggest corporate bankruptcy in the world at that time. Not exactly the most reliable partner for Blockbuster to take on. A massive L. In 2002, Blockbuster pivoted their focus to games. They acquired Movie Trading Company, a Dallas chain that buys, sells, and trades movies and games to study potential business models for DVD and game trading. Also that year, they acquired GameStation, a 64-store UK computer and console games retailer chain. They seemed to dip their toe into the online world when they purchased DVD Rental Central for $1 million. This was a father and son owned online DVD rental company with maybe 10,000 subscribers. Eventually, Blockbuster would turn this into Blockbuster Online, and they rolled that out in 2004. Blockbuster's venture to mimic Netflix, the same company that they laughed out of their offices, was unsuccessful. Blockbuster also rolled out
its Game Rush store-in-store concept to approximately 450 domestic company-operated stores. These stores sold and bought DVDs, games, game consoles, and accessories. This allowed Game Rush to be a direct competitor to stores such as GameStop and Game Crazy. A lot of creativity at this time when it came to naming game stores, clearly.
Laurels for spring. Groundbreaking.
Blockbuster used its location status to gain attention. It also promoted these stores by hosting video game tournaments, special trade-in offers, and a more hip look to the selection and staff. This strategy seemed to be a way to draw in the preteen, teen, and young adult crowd. Not a bad move at all, really, and it showed. At its peak in 2004, Blockbuster operated 9,000 stores globally and had not a red light in sight. In December that same year, Blockbuster announced its intention to pursue a hostile takeover of Hollywood Video, its major US competitor. To counter the Blockbuster offer, Hollywood Video agreed to a buyout in January 2005 by a smaller competitor.
In May 2005, a financier named Carl Icahn waged a successful proxy fight to add himself and 2 others to the board. He accused Blockbuster of overpaying the CEO, who was making over $50 million in 2004. Do you say 2004 or 2004? Icahn was also at odds with the CEO Antioco over how they were going to revive this company. Icahn scrapped late fees and started an online service and decided to keep the company independent, and Icahn wanted to sell out to a private equity firm.
To promote the scrapping of late fees, Blockbuster began the No More Late Fees campaign. The campaign proved controversial, with Associated Press reporting that the new policy actually charged users the full price of the movie or game after 8 days, which they could cancel by returning the product in question and paying a fee. Because of this obviously very stupid campaign, more than 40 states filed suit against the company for false advertising. Blockbuster later settled the suit by agreeing to refunds as well as promising to better explain the policy. Very manipulative, very shady little campaign they had going on. Now, because they'd be losing money on late fees, Blockbuster had to put Game Rush on the chopping block.
In 2007, Blockbuster saw a new CEO, James W. Keyes, former CEO and president of 7-Eleven. He introduced a new business strategy that involved enhancements to already existing stores. The following month, in August, Blockbuster acquired MovieLink for $6.6 million, forecasting a shift to streaming video. Finally, this forecast was like predicting a tornado while standing in the eye of the tornado.
Hi, this is Karen Smith. It's 68 degrees, and there's a 30% chance that it's already raining.
MovieLink was an online video service that allowed customers to download movie rentals from a library of over 6,000 films, created in 2002 by 5 major studios, including Warner Brothers, MGM Studios, Paramount Pictures, Sony Pictures, and Universal Studios. The move gave Blockbuster the opportunity to move away from the unprofitable total access DVD by mail service in favor of online streaming. Despite growing competition from Netflix and Redbox, the company downplayed the threat, choosing instead to focus on Apple and Walmart as their primary competition. Blockbuster probably still kept that "we're the Goliath" attitude in their mind, and forgot the potential of a humble company with an ambitious plan, like their own company. At the beginning of 2010, Blockbuster had over 6,500 stores, of which 4,000 were in the US, a number that fell to 3,425 in late October of the very same year. More people were interested in Netflix or renting via on demand. We wanted to watch the newest release and snuggle up with some popcorn and snowcaps, but we no longer wanted the trouble of going out to get the film. We didn't care about the experience in store anymore. A great experience was now the most convenient, hassle-free experience. And what is more easy than renting a film from your couch? In the United States, Blockbuster planned to close between 810 and 960 retail stores.
and instead launch as many as 10,000 Blockbuster Express video rental kiosks by the middle of 2010. It cut costs for Blockbuster and offered a sort of meet-in-the-middle approach for customers' convenience. Or so that's what Blockbuster thought. They wouldn't have to pay brick-and-mortar rent or utilities or staff for stores. The company still could not see the gold standard that had been set already. You cannot beat the ease of renting from home. And instead of accepting that and adjusting their business, they ignored it and kept with their dated strategies. Another issue that was chomping at Blockbuster was piracy. In February 2010, Blockbuster announced that it would be ceasing all operations in Portugal, closing down 17 outlets and leaving over 100 workers unemployed. Blockbuster representatives in Portugal blamed internet piracy and the lack of government response to it as the key factors of the company's failure in their country. Struggling to recoup losses, in March 2010, Blockbuster brought back late fees, but slapped some lipstick on a pig, dubbing it additional daily rates, or ADRs, for rentals not returned by their due dates in the United States. The company already used this procedure in other countries such as the UK for many years. They didn't have to restart anything. An ADR was charged for each day a member kept the rental beyond the rental terms. Obviously, this left a sour taste in customers' mouths. You can't give customers a crazy deal or a crazy promise like no late fees and then walk it back. A promise that was half-assed and misleading to begin with. They put that bullshit out there and then said, no, you don't even get that. And of course, this alienated customers. The red flags were everywhere. In 2010, Blockbuster issued a bankruptcy warning after continued drops in revenue threatened its ability to service its nearly $1 billion debt load. By spring of that year, Carl Icahn resigned from Blockbuster's board of directors and sold nearly all of his remaining Blockbuster stock. Blockbuster paired up with Time Warner and eventually took advantage of the idea to have movies made available in Blockbuster stores on the DVD release date and not be subject to a 4-week delay. Similar agreements were also made with Universal and 20th Century Fox. Despite this great deal, the hits kept coming. On July 1st, 2010, the company was delisted from the New York Stock Exchange after its shareholders failed to pass a reverse stock split plan aimed at heading off involuntary delisting because of the stock's trading at well below $1 per share. A few months after, Blockbuster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection due to challenging losses, $900 million of debt, and strong competition from Netflix, Redbox, and video-on-demand services. At the time of its Chapter 11 filing, Blockbuster said it would keep its 3,300 stores open. But that December, they announced their plans to close an additional 182 stores by the end of April 2011 in attempts to emerge from bankruptcy. Blockbuster admitted that they may not be able to meet their financial obligations that were required under their Chapter 11 filing. Instead of bankruptcy, Blockbuster was now facing liquidation. But just in the nick of time, a South Korean telecommunications company, SK Telecom, made a surprise bid to buy Blockbuster, starting a last-minute bidding war. Dish Network had also expressed interest in bidding. Dish eventually won the auction, agreeing to buy Blockbuster for $320 million, and announced that only 500 Blockbuster stores would remain open. In April 2011, Dish Network told the U.S. bankruptcy court that it needed more time to negotiate with landlords in an effort to keep more than 600 Blockbuster stores open. In May of the same year, another CEO bit the dust when Keyes resigned. Keyes was replaced by Michael Kelly under the new title of president, and the changes just kept coming. By the summer, liquidators announced over 250 Canadian stores would be shutting down, and that was the entire Canadian unit. In the fall, the company launched its response to the rise of Netflix when they rolled out Blockbuster Movie Pass. The plan for MoviePass wasn't half bad. For $10 per month, the members would have access to both a streaming service and movies in-game by mail. The problem lied within the conditions. The package was only available for subscribers of Dish Network's pay TV service, and so it eventually folded. However, Blockbuster kept up with kiosks at the time, hoping that could generate enough profit to help the company bounce back. In 2011, there were nearly 10,000 Blockbuster Express kiosks in operation. The man in charge now, Dish CEO Joe Clayton, had plans of keeping 90% of Blockbuster stores operational. That was 15,000 jobs. He stated the obvious, saying that some stores that weren't profitable weren't gonna make it. Duh. But that each potential closing would be assessed on a case-to-case basis. After MoviePass plummeted, to put it kindly, Dish Network announced that it was scrapping all plans to compete with Netflix because that clearly was not the answer to their problems. The company seemed to be flopping like a fish. They were unable to stay focused on what goal would keep them profitable, on trend, and to keep customers satisfied. And for years, they suffered truly until the very, very end. Between November 2013 and January 2014, all 300 remaining corporate-owned Blockbuster stores in the US were closed, and the DVD by mail program was shut down. The Blockbuster official website identified only 51 franchise locations remaining in operation in the US that year. Although Blockbuster stores could remain open by paying a licensing fee to Dish, there was no longer a corporate entity to provide supplies of branded products, forcing franchisees to design and produce their own. Because of this, there were obviously additional store closures. Previous franchise owner Ken Tischer said in 2015, quote, "Blockbuster, if it isn't already, is going to go into the Harvard Business Review for how not to run a business, or how to run a business into the ground," unquote. By January 2018, the company's website listed 9 remaining franchise-owned stores in the US, including 6 in Alaska, 2 in Oregon, and 1 in Texas. 8 of those 9 stores had closed by August 2018, leaving only 1 store in Bend, Oregon. In March 2019, the last remaining store outside of the United States, located in Morley, Western Australia, closed its doors. The Bend, Oregon location became the last remaining Blockbuster in the world. It's a tourist spot now where visitors can see movie props and even rent it as an Airbnb for a 90s themed sleepover. And just like that, the bright company that had progressive beginnings turned into a nostalgic memory at best, and a failed company that refused to continue progressing with the time at worst. Jonathan Salem Baskin, a former Blockbuster marketing communications executive, stated, quote, "Digital would have changed Blockbuster's business, for sure, but it wasn't its killer. That credit belongs to Blockbuster itself." Between poor decision-making, poor and inconsistent leadership, inability to forecast trends and to adjust to those trends, and a poor execution of even their dated ideas, Blockbuster seemed to take what appeared to be a golden opportunity and completely dissolved it. The opportunity seemed golden, yes, but they dunked it in metaphorical chlorine earlier than you may think. Blockbuster struggled financially throughout most of its history. They were only profitable for 2 years between 1996 and 2010. They just constantly expanded, and people really did love the experience. We know that. But clearly this business model was not viable even before competitors started popping up left and right. Blockbuster's main strategy was to open as many stores as it could all over the country so it could reach a massive chunk of the market. This strategy did work for a period of time, but it also drew huge operating costs. Blockbuster realized this a little too late, and even when it was too late, they still introduced another plan. The new strategy was to acquire more new movie rentals and regulate the old rentals to the back of the store. That limited shelf space for old titles, and new titles were limited in supply. The mistake with this last business decision was that Blockbuster underestimated how much people wanted the old titles that they now had much less stock of. The ones that weren't looking for old titles were frustrated as well because the new titles were not readily available. And more often than not, the customer would leave empty-handed and dissatisfied. Every customer that waited in line waited just to find out that the movie they wanted to rent wasn't in stock because it was rented out by another customer or because it was old and Blockbuster no longer carried it at all. Blockbuster lost its credibility and in turn lost customers. They also continued to annoy customers with their ridiculous late fees. Late fees accounted for more than 15% of Blockbuster's revenue at the company's peak. When a customer returned a DVD late, they were hit with a substantial fee. A standard late fee would be a $1 per day that would be added for every movie title that was late for up to 10 days. The company blocked its ears and refused to listen to the customer's feedback and continued on with their change making. In the end, to stay competitive, Blockbuster lowered its prices because they were losing customers to Netflix. And because of their budget constraints and old habits, Blockbuster executives were still stuck with these outdated strategies that only had a temporary lifespan. Not only did they ignore what their customers wanted, they also ignored the changes in technology. The company was very against moving to online rentals and preferred to stick with its brick and mortar roots. Clearly, there was a bit of pride and, dare I say, arrogance involved in all of this decision making. The landscape was changing and they really couldn't see past their previous success, if you even can call it that. Change had been staring them down for years, and by the time it was nose to nose with them, they were far too slow to react. And the cherry on top of this shit sundae was the debt. By the time Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010, it was $1 billion with a B. $1 billion in debt. Money could have changed everything for Blockbuster. It could keep them afloat at the time when they finally saw the streaming light. Something very interesting that I read about and I never even thought of was how Blockbuster completely missed the opportunity to understand the market via their massive database. It has been claimed that over 43 million US households had Blockbuster memberships, and that is a lot of potential information to gather about the market and about your customers. The recording data of all the titles that were rented, identifying their preferences, and buying habit based on customer group could have given them a treasure trove, data that could improve their pricing and their business model. But they did not have the foresight or skill to take advantage of this. There were many reasons for the rise of Blockbuster, but ironically, some of those same reasons were to blame for its downfall as well. Plus many, many more reasons as well, as I've mentioned. I'm really glad I had a positive first-hand experience with Blockbuster and really vivid, amazing memories. Not only Blockbusters, I also got to experience mom and pop video shops as well as the blue and yellow wave crashed upon us and flooded the country with Blockbusters.